Hi friends, Sherin Mathews, the storyteller. So today I have a very interesting story for you. Why interesting is because I'm 100% sure that 90% of you have heard the story. And so many of my FP friends are trainers and teachers and motivational speakers. I'm sure you've used the story somewhere. It's so common and so popular. The name of the story is David and Goliath. Now, why interesting is because I want to tell you the story in a very different light, which you might have not really thought of. Even I it never occurred to me. I never saw the story in this light till I read the research work of Malcolm Gladwell. It was amazing to read his works. This is how he explains it. This really happened. It's in the history. It occurred 3,000 years ago. There was this coastal line called Palestine, and there was this hilly range called Israel. Now, Palestine and Israel had a beautiful place in between called Shefla. Now, why beautiful is because it was filled with oak trees and vineyards and valleys. And anybody from Philistine, if they wanted to go to Israel, or from Israel, if they wanted to go to Philistine, had to cross this Shefla. Now, Philistine thinks of attacking Israel, and so they cross the valley through the Shefla and are sitting here at one point. And these people in Israel have come down from the hilly range, and they're also waiting at one point somewhere in Shefla. They sit there dead for months, not attacking, because they have to cross this Shefla, and they would be exposed. These people would be exposed, these people would be exposed. It was a very difficult position. So what they think of is a single combat, calling for a single combat. Now that was the tradition of the olden times. In order to prevent bloodshed of so many soldiers, they actually sent one strong soldier from one side and the other strong soldier from the other side, and they both had a duel, and whoever won, that army actually would be considered as the one who won the war. And so Palestine had this giant called Goliath. Now Goliath is 6 feet 9 inches tall. Can you believe it? He's abnormally tall, a giant. He had a bronze shiny armor, a sword, a sheath, a spear. He was an image of terror. Everybody was terrified of him. And here, King Saul of Israel had nobody who was willing to go and fight this Goliath. Now there is one boy, a shepherd called David. David goes and tells King Saul, I am willing to go and fight this giant. King Saul and everybody is surprised and are not willing to send this little kiddo to fight that fierce, terrible giant. But David is insistent. He says, I pray to God often, and I have this powerful slingshot, and always, every time a lion or a wolf comes to attack my sheep, I actually defend my sheep and I attack them with the slingshot that I have, and God always helps me and protects my sheep. Now, the king has no option because nobody else is ready to go and fight this giant Goliath. So he says yes. He asks his soldiers to go and get him an armor. They bring an armor and they put it on David. And David, overweighted by the weight of this armor, cannot move an inch. He says, I don't want this. He takes it all out and he says, God is with me. I'm going to fight this giant and I need my sling, and that's all. He bends down, picks up 3 stones, puts it in his pocket, and walks towards meeting Goliath. Now Goliath is already armored. 2 soldiers hold him and bring him slowly to the battleground. He has a huge, scary voice. He says, who is this who has come to fight me? This kid? Are you really thinking of winning over me? Are you going to fight me with this stone and these sticks? I'm going to tear you apart and feed your flesh to the beasts and the birds. We are perturbed, not David. David seems not to be listening. Goliath says, "Come, let's fight." But David is standing his ground. He takes a stone from his pocket, puts it in his sling, and he rotates his sling and rotates and rotates and rotates and rotates and throws it at Goliath. It goes and hits him right at the center of his forehead, and he falls down. Now, we don't know whether he's unconscious or whether he's dead. But the moment he falls down, David runs to a soldier, takes his sword, comes running to Goliath and slays him. That's the end of Goliath and the victory of the Israelites. Isn't that an amazing story? Now, when you think of it, David is actually the underdog. He is a small kid. He doesn't have an armor. He has only a slingshot and a stone. And he's such a teeny weeny thing. He has no experience of a battle combat. There you go. But Malcolm Gladwell has really turned around the story. He says that in those times, there were three kinds of warriors. One were the ones who were on the horses and chariots. The other ones had these bronze armors and they had swords. And the third ones were archers or slingers. Can you believe it? It was such a sport taken so seriously. So David, from the time he's a kid, has been practicing on the slingshot. Now the sling is not an ordinary sling with a rubber band which you pull and throw your shots. No, this is a leather belt. And it has very special kind of stones that are put into it. These stones are not ordinary stones. They are made of barium sulfate. That means the density is much, much, much higher than the stones. And the way they sling it and rotate it is around 6 to 7 rotations per second. You can imagine the speed of the shot and a stone whose density is much higher than the regular stones. And when it goes and hits somebody here, now, Goliath was an abnormal person, okay? He was abnormally tall, 6'9". He was a giant. So instead of his height being a boon to him, it was actually a pain. With all the weight and the muscle that he had, it was difficult for him to move. So he moved very slowly. He could not be as fierce and as fast as David. And then the people who had this kind of abnormal height actually suffered from a disease called acromegaly. And the people who had acromegaly had a side effect where they had very, very weak eyesight. And also this was a disease which arose from a hormone irregularity in your pituitary gland, which is situated right at the center of the forehead. David is a smart cookie. He's not only an expert warrior slinger with a slingshot, but he also knows the weakness of this giant. And he hits him bang on at the spot from where he could not recover. And he falls. Oh, isn't that an amazing light thrown onto a story which we've been hearing for so long? So all that we learn, my dear friends, from the story is, and something that we all should remember is, every giant that we see is not as strong and great as we think they are. And any little shepherd boy can have some stones and slingshot in their pocket.